Welcome back to Counseling 882. With me today is John Christensen. He's a specialist from the Vet Center and a readjustment counseling therapist. What does it exactly mean to be a readjustment counseling therapist, John?
Well, I like that they put counselor in there first. Therapist tends to come down, and readjustment being the first word. The Vet Center was created in about 1979 in response to Vietnam vets that were having a real problem readjusting to civilian life. Very angry, a lot of drinking, a lot of drugging, just didn't feel anybody was listening. So we were created as a peer program, combat vets helping combat vets, or combat theater helping combat vets, with the purpose really of saying what you went through was a normal reaction to an abnormal event, combat, and that anything you were feeling is normal and natural, and what we want to do is help you come back to that civilian world, to find not an old you, but to find the new you. So that's really what it means. It's not heavy on therapy, although we do some, but we really treat it that we are working with very competent people who have lost their way because they experienced something and they expected just to step right back into their old life, their families, their jobs, and they're just having a hard time doing that. So we help them readjust.
Well, what are some of the major issues that returning soldiers come to you with?
The phrase that we're using today is post-traumatic stress, and then we add D to it for disorder, and I don't really like putting that out there right away. I prefer to think of it as a post-combat stress, maybe post-deployment stress. We first called it post-Vietnam stress. Main issues were that we left America in kind of one situation, socially, politically, musically, all of that. And when we came back, America had changed. At least that was our view of it.
You're talking about Vietnam?
Well, Vietnam, but when you go off to any deployment, when you come back, you're a different person. But since you're the same person you are on the inside, that's what you're thinking, everybody else has changed. So it's kind of a view of the world, a perspective of the world. So the biggest thing people come back to, I think, is that America is not what they expected it to be, what they dreamed of. We really notice that there's an emphasis on things that are not very important, a lot of trivia, a lot of shallowness. When we say, don't you understand that there's a lot going out there, people are dying, people are suffering, and you're concerned about the latest thing through, I pick on Apple, I guess, as being a certain kind of thing. Relationships are very, very tough, a lot of irritation, a lot of problems with patience. Too much stimulation, noise. So if you got kids, the kids are just making too much noise. People are asking too many questions. You get overloaded. You get pretty well overwhelmed. Your friends are not the same. They look at you like you're different. So it's really hard to carry on a conversation with them. I think sometimes you feel almost like a leper. The people are judging you based on what they've heard, what they've read, what they saw in the media. So it's just total confusion, really.
How do vets hear about your services?
Well, that's kind of, we're the big secret. We are a part of the VA, but we're really kind of a hidden part of the VA. And we're a very small program considering how big the VA is, all the things that VA Veterans Administration is doing for veterans. So they find us by and large by word of mouth, just by hearing about what we do. We also welcome them back when we come back from deployment. So we make our presence known at the Fort McCoy in Wisconsin, but wherever they happen to come back to. So it really is an underrepresented program in a lot of kinds of ways. But we see enough people to keep us busy. And the other part is we do focus only on combat theater vets. So very often people within the VA recognize the skills that we have, the service we provide, and they make referrals. So that's a source. The other is in every county in Wisconsin, you have a county veteran service officer, and that person really is my go-to person to any vet. If you've got a question, if you wonder what's going on, talk to your county veteran service officer. And then we get a lot of our referrals from them when the vets come in and they start talking about some of the symptoms they're coming up with. And so the vet says, why don't you go talk to our vet center counselor, who's usually available.
What do you think is the most troubling symptom that the veterans come to you with, from their perspective?
Just that confusion, trying to figure out why this isn't going away. These are very competent, very skilled folks. Today's military is very professional. People are there because they volunteered to be there, so we're not getting a lot of the problems we had with the draft. And the draft was wonderful, but you had a lot of people who really didn't want to be there. Today, some people have a hard time being there as well with as many deployments as we're having. But it really comes back, I'm trained, I'm prepared, I'm very proficient at what I do. Why can't I just slip back into my old role? In Wisconsin especially, we have National Guard and Reserve units. We don't have active service units, active duty units very much. And so people are really thinking that they were there for maybe 6 months or to a year, and so why can't we just come back in, pick up the pieces, and go on from there? So when they become very, very irritable and they lose their patience, or they can't sleep, or they have intrusive thoughts, which are just thoughts come out of nowhere. I call them really the gremlin thoughts. Maybe we can talk about that. But I'm just having a great time, and these thoughts just come to my head, and they just take me back to where I was. People can have flashbacks, feelings of depression, anxiety. So all of that is very, very strange. It's very unsuspected that it's happening to people. Okay? Don't know where it's coming from. So they want to take care of it themselves. They want to do it without a whole lot of outside help. They should be able to. And when they can't do that, that really sets them back on their tail.
Talk more about the gremlin thoughts.
The
gremlin thoughts.
gremlin
The gremlin thoughts, right.
Oh my goodness. I do have to mention I was in Vietnam 67, 68. So for me, recovery has been 40 years. And this is, of course, a personal experience. A lot of people perhaps put it behind them and go on with their lives, don't think about it much. I've just had a hard time doing that. And it's not that it's all terrible, it's just that it's there. It just has a constant presence. And so one of the presences that I've been working with perhaps for the last year or so are these random thoughts that seem to come in and just mess with you. And those are my gremlin thoughts. But to go back a little bit before that, I have to talk about some of the other, kind of the other thoughts. One of those are monsters. Monsters, my analogy to that, I don't know if everybody knows, is the cartoon script, Calvin and Hobbes. One of my favorites. So if you don't know about it, go to Go Comics and go and look that up. Calvin is just a wonderful little fellow, and his Tigger is named Hobbes. And when they go to bed at night, Mom and Dad tucks them in, turns off the light, and all of a sudden they hear the voices from under the bed. And they have great arguments about who's going to go and take care of those monsters. Finally, Mom and Dad comes to the door, turns on the light, and poof, the monsters are gone. Well, that's what happens to us a lot. We go well during the day, things are just fine, taking care of business, go to bed, excuse me, and about maybe 12, for me it's about 1:30, maybe 2 o'clock, pow, just wide awake. And you lay there wondering what's going on, and all of a sudden you get these really kind of scary thoughts. But I've learned over the years that when you get up in the morning, the thoughts are gone. Right? Whatever those terrible things were, you can handle that. We've handled it so far. Nothing's killed me yet, tried. The other are dragons. Dragons lay on top of treasure. And very often with that treasure, it could be a relationship, it could be a job, it could be just new opportunities. So you really want to go and try for those, which is fine, but be careful because if you wake up the dragon will turn you into a crispy critter. So on one hand, I want the treasure, on the other hand, I got to be careful. So I think the message behind that is there are always consequences, and there's an upside and downside. Well, those are fine. The parents of monsters love their baby monsters. The parents of dragons love their baby dragons. But the parents of gremlins, oh man, I'm not even sure why they had them, because they just don't like those suckers. And the babies, gremlins, don't like their parents all that well either. So the purpose of the gremlins is to come in and just make as much trouble in your life as they possibly can. That's what they do. There was an old cartoon once about Donald Duck or Huey, Dewey, and Louie wanted to go to school, and the angel duck popped up on one shoulder and said, you ought to go to school, and the devil duck popped up on the other shoulder and said, oh, come on, you can play hooky today. Well, gremlins are really the same kind of thing. They mess with you. And the problem with most of us is we like to argue. We like to be rational. We like to give a rational explanation, maybe get into a discussion about these voices that are going on in our head, explaining things to us. And the problem is, the more you argue with gremlins, the happier they get. And they just mess with you. So I've learned recently that the only real way to get gremlins out of your life is to laugh at them, pat them on the head, be patient with them, smile. The last thing you want to do is argue. So I kind of designed a place, or came up with a place that I called a meadow. And the meadow is a place where the gremlins never come. So as long as I can go to that place, meditation, maybe prayer can get you there. Just deep breathing, being busy, focused, exercising. There are a lot of ways to keep the gremlins away. But when you go into a place and you just let your mind wander, very often if you're having problems with readjustment or coming home, or you've got a lot of memories that you're trying to hide or bury, that's when the gremlins come in and say, you know what, you haven't thought about this for a while, and I think you should. Well, why should I? Oh man, don't you know how you, and it goes on from there. So that's my gremlins. I don't know where you'll find that in any psychology book. I'm sure it's in there somewhere. But I know they're alive and well and kicking. Yeah.
How do you help the veteran develop the meadow? The meadow idea.
Thank you. The meadow comes as a balance point to the swamp. There's everything in life, I think, has a yin and a yang, an up and a down, a black and a white, just differences. And I learned at some point, being a counselor, that when people come in to see me, they really want to present, I call it pathology, maybe drama. So they come in with their drama, their pain and their frustration and guilt, whatever it happens to be. And so I get this image of this dark area that perhaps we all have. I'm sure we do. And in there are all of those disappointments, failures, things we feel guilty about, things we regret, problems in relationships, problems in jobs. I mean, many of us just have very, very full and active swamps. And then people come in and saying, I don't want to be there anymore. Well, that's cool. So then when people say, well, maybe what I just need to do is give myself happy thoughts. And so they do that. They have happy thoughts. But the problem is they don't believe it. So they say it, but the gremlins get in, or the monsters come in, or their environment is just really pretty messed up. And so the happy thoughts don't work, but they really want to get to meadow. So I was trying to figure out what is stopping them from getting to that place that they all say they want to be. I think we all want to be there. And I realized that there's a fear line, and that while they want to be in the meadow, they're absolutely terrified of what the expectations might be if they're up there. And then the gremlins come in and say, of course, well, you don't deserve it, you don't have a right to it, you're not old enough, big enough, trained enough, whatever, it doesn't really matter. So people go up to that fear line and they try it, and they get a step into the meadow. The meadow is that place where you want to be. It really is your happy place. But then things happen and they go right back into the swamp, and they begin to have a habit, and the habit is failure, I guess, pain. Well, Freud came up, maybe others too, I don't know, but Freud came up with that basic human behavior, say that we avoid pain and we approach pleasure. So if you get an image in your head, you got a pleasure place up here and a pain place down here and a fear line in the middle. And then people say, this is interesting, I think. Well, if I really don't want to be there and that's a painful place, why do I stay there? Why do I stay in this relationship? Why do I stay with this drinking or this drug use or this gambling or whatever it happens to be? And the real funny thing is, well, because it might be a better place than the place that you came from. So even that pain might be better than the pain you used to experience. So in a relative term, even that bad relationship is better than no relationship, or it's better because that person doesn't hit me, or, you know, we play a lot of games with ourselves. The meadow really is a place where you come to an understanding that you can't be mentally, I don't think, emotionally. You can't really be both in a swamp and in a meadow at the same time. You can bounce back and forth between the two. But if you really want to be in the meadow, you need to focus on what it is you want. So I've got two things, and I often wish that I bring things along as my show and tell, and I can't do that. But one of my heroes is a fellow named Nelson Mandela. I think most everybody knows Nelson. African. I like to say African American, but he gets kind of ticked at me when I say that. He's an African who spent most of his productive life in a political prison in South Africa, there for no other reason that he was African, black, and really wanted his country to be controlled and ruled by people who belonged there, who grew there, not the people who came in. So he spoke his piece, he spoke his mind, he spoke his truth, and he ended up for 40 years in a political prison. So from the age of about 30 to the age of about 70, he was in a political prison. That's pretty serious stuff. By 70, most of us think that we're ready to give it up. We're retired, ready to die. We've made our contribution to the world. He was released at the age of 72. And I saw a picture of him. He walked out of prison. His head was up, shoulders were back. He was groomed. He had beautiful clothes on. And what really struck me was with his head up, he was walking to the future. He was this way. The prison was behind him. I didn't get any sense from him that he even gave a considering or a thought or anything to that. And he walked away. 10 years later, he was the first president of the new country of South Africa, ended apartheid, did some very phenomenal things at 80 years old. 80 years old. He's in his 90s, and except for getting a little bit younger, he's doing some pretty phenomenal things in his 90s. And what he said was, it wasn't our darkness that frightens us, it's our light. Because we ask ourselves, who are you to not be fantastic, powerful, gorgeous, accomplishing beyond measure? He said, you're a child of God, and being small does not serve any purpose. And that when you live large, people around you have the courage to live large themselves. And that really got me. He also said this is not something that only a few of us have, but it's something, the potential, the possibility of something we all have. I didn't quote that very well, but it's a nice paraphrase. And that really got me. I'm a little older now, and I guess in one way I should be thinking about retiring, and all I'm thinking about is, how can I live my life better, bigger? How can I do that? Well, I figured out it's not by living in the swamp. It's not by complaining about the things I can't do or haven't done, or the things that people have done to me, or any of that stuff. It's by deciding that today is the only day of the rest of my life, first day of the rest of my life. John Denver, God bless his soul. Today is the first day. What am I going to do with today? I can be angry, I can be depressed, I can be resentful, I can be all of that, or I can just live this day as fully as I possibly can. I can make my day, because I'm aware if I don't make my day, somebody's going to make it for me. So you make choices. You take the consequences of those choices. And you're going to have to pay for it. If you're up in that meadow, people are not going to like that. They're going to resent it. They're not going to understand it. But if you're there, that's where your life happens. So I have another clue to add to that. Discovered a fellow named Manuel Ruiz. And he wrote a book, a real simple read. I like simple read books, called The Four Agreements. He wrote another one recently called The Fifth Agreement, which really I think is the one to read, because it takes the four agreements and then the fifth, which is four agreements. The first is speak your truth, be impeccable with your word. I really got taken by that because I couldn't figure out what the word meant. Then I went to the Bible, good place to start. Book of John, verse 1, chapter 1. In the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Holy camole. Speak your truth, speak your word. That's pretty heavy stuff. So I realized, even with that, as you think about it, the word that I have was given to me by my parents, by the church, by the neighborhood I grew up in, the school I went to, the music I listened to. And all of that is good, you know. That's the things I believe in, but it's really not the truth. Because not everybody grew up in my neighborhood or my church or any of that. You know, they grew up in their own, so they have their own beliefs, and they would defend their beliefs as much as I want to defend my beliefs. But quite honestly, neither of them are true. You know, they're all lies, myths, whatever. So somewhere, though, is the truth. There are some truths out there, and And the trick really is to find what those truths are and then have the courage to speak that. Well, in the process of doing that, we also need to learn not to take things quite so personally. And that's really hard because my ego gets involved, so does yours, so does everybody else's. You can't say that about me. Well, I don't know. You can't cut me off on the road. Well, the person didn't know they were cutting me off. You know, they didn't know that. So I need to back that off. I need to stop taking things so personally. And as soon as you do that, there's no reason to argue. There's no reason to defend yourself. There's no reason to fight. How about not making assumptions? We all know what the word assumption means. But we make assumptions, thousands of assumptions a day. And the last one is just do the best you can. And that's phenomenal. That either means, like the Army term, be the best you can be, which is true. But it also is, why don't you just give yourself a break? You know, you're doing the best you can. Just give yourself that. And then the last one, the fifth agreement, which really he focused on because he knew that was going to be the hardest, was doubt, which goes back to speaking your truth. Doubt everything. All right, be skeptical, be a little, maybe even cynical, I don't know. But understand that we all have beliefs, but just because we believe them doesn't make them true. So what does this have to do with working with veterans or working with trauma? I think it has everything to do with it. Because when people come back, they have all of these beliefs that are making them crazy, that is putting them in the swamp when that's not where they want to be. They're taking everything personally. They're making so many assumptions. They really believe that what is wrong with them is that they're sick or that they're crazy. And none of that is true. They're experiencing the things that one would expect to experience if they went through not only a traumatic event, but go through a traumatic event. This is what makes, I think, soldiering different than any other trauma. Go through a traumatic event, lose a friend, come near death, watch things that happen in combat, civilians being killed, people being mistreated, just destruction and noise and stink and all of that. And you go back to your area and you do the best you can. And then the next morning, about the same time, you put on all your battle rattle, your gear, and you go outside the wire again with the threat of experiencing exactly the same thing, maybe worse, maybe different. In the end of the day, you go back, and then the next day, you go back out and do it again. And in the meantime, maybe at night, just to make sure you don't get a good night's sleep, maybe you take a rocket attack or a mortar attack, which is really impersonal, but you take it very personally. But it's very impersonal. And it just disturbs everything. And you learn things about yourself and about other people that are very disturbing. And when you try to go to sleep, these images just keep coming over and over and over. You can't get the thoughts out of your head, but you have to continue the mission. So if you lose a friend, if you're scared, it really doesn't matter. And you're scared. You're scared. But you got to put the stuff on again, and you got to bury the fear, you got to go outside the wire, you got to do it again and again and again and again. And then all of a sudden one day you just go home, and people expect you to put it away.
I have something I'd like to read at this point. You know,
Cool.
when you talk about going back over and over again and the professionalism of the soldiers. I am an American soldier. I am a warrior and a member of a team. I serve the people of the United States and live the Army values. I will always place the mission first. I will never accept defeat. I will never quit. I will never leave a fallen comrade. I am disciplined, physically and mentally tough, trained and proficient in my warrior tasks and drills. I always maintain my arms, my equipment, and myself. I am an expert. I am a professional. I stand ready to deploy, engage, and destroy the enemies of the United States of America in close combat. I'm a guardian of freedom and the American way of life. I am an American soldier.
What do you think about that?
It's a lot to carry with you, a lot to have on your shoulders. It's a burden.
Yeah, it is. It is a burden. It's a responsibility. In our society, we have a warrior class that is, even with all of this, it really is not a warrior class that we take into our society. It's a warrior class that we hold separate. So we put them in camps and areas, very often not in the best parts of the country, not the worst, but not always the best. And we put them there and let them stay there, and then we go about our business. You know, we go to Walmart and Target and McDonald's, and we really want to keep them out of sight. We say good things about them, but we don't necessarily want them in our neighborhood. And then we send them overseas, and we send all kinds of things to them and say it's all good. But when they come back, once again, the society really doesn't want them too much around. They're scary. They might have that PTSD. They might get angry. They might do something crazy. I do a lot of assessments for violence in the workplace. And when I'm asked, you know, is that person safe? My tendency is to say, no one is safe if you push them too far. You know, it's not just a certain pattern that people follow, but anybody can react or act out in a way if they get pushed too far. So we like to keep them over here. The burden is something, though, that as a culture, as a society, we all share, whether we like it or not. When people make the pledge to become a warrior, very often without being aware of it, this happens for both boys and girls when they are very, very young. To a certain extent, maybe still boys and girls, but we can talk about that, I don't know. But in part because boys still more than young girls grew up with cowboys and Indians and weapons and all that stuff. So it's kind of part of the warrior class. So it gets in. It's sort of like somebody wanting to play football. Very often, if you're in Texas, you start football about 5 or 6, you know, serious, so that by the time you're in high school or college, you know, you're pretty good at it. And it takes over your whole life. So very often, growing up and being a warrior could be the same thing. You could join scouts because you want to learn how to survive. You look at things different. You perhaps exercise more. You get into hunting and outdoor things, and you take on all of that. In Native cultures, I've got some friends who are Lakota, and the word they use is Akishita. Matakwewis, and as we're all related, which is true too, but Akishita, which is being a warrior. But to them, a warrior is a guardian of the tribe. They are the peacekeepers. They are the ones who go in and help settle down arguments or disputes. So part of being a warrior is protecting the society, not just killing the enemies, but also being guardian of all of society. So when we go off to battle, we are really going off because of our parents, our friends, our community, you know, maybe more so than American ideals or any of that kind of stuff. I mean, it's there, but really you're going there to protect your friends, to serve your friends. So when you come back, it's really important that we welcome these folks back, back into the community, back into our families, back into our churches and our schools and our places of employment. And so part of that burden is when a person is willing to come back. I see you got a couple stones over there. If you have 2 of those stones, they have a, well, okay, no, but see, you just did it already. If you have 2 stones, if you have a whole backpack full of stones, it's very, very heavy. But if I come in and take one and I share it, I can handle that. You know, I can handle that stone. And now you've got 1 stone less that you have to carry. And so that's what happens when we come in and we teach people how to talk with veterans, how to feel comfortable with veterans, how to ask the questions that are needed to be asked. It's not the question we're asking a lot of times, but how we ask the question, the meaning behind it, the feeling behind it. It's like if you ask somebody whether or not you had to kill someone, we find that very offensive. But if that's really set out by saying, you did something that I don't know if I could ever do, that taking the life of another to protect a friend, not even protect yourself, protect a friend, I'm very taken by that. The tone is completely different, you know, because you're asking something out of deep respect. And you have stones, and I have stones too. I have to show my stone.
You mentioned sharing. You brought some things.
We brought some things. I'll let you have this stone when I'm done. This is an Apache tear. This tear, the story goes, it contains the tears of a warrior's family. When the family came to collect his body, they cried, and their tears fell on these black agates. And while it's hard to see in all of them, these are translucent. And I call them tear or a rock of sorrow. But the purpose is to do a couple things. One is to take your sorrow and to put it in a stone which represents the earth. And the earth is our source, as well as heaven, but our local source. And when you fill that with sorrow, you can put it back into Mother Earth, put it in the soil, and let Mother Earth take that sorrow from you, much like we do with our prayers. Pray to God to take the sorrow from me. And then when you take the stone back, you put it back in your pocket. I suggest people carry it as a reminder for the gratitude that they have to be on the planet, to be able to serve their fellow human beings, that we all have feelings, that we can feel joy and sadness and sorrow, and that's really what makes us human, and that we all have a burden and a mission, and by sharing that burden and that mission, we can be stronger for it. I think our veterans are here to help us understand that, and that they're really no different than us, but they did do something that most of us never have an opportunity to do, or perhaps have passed on that opportunity. So I'm happy to serve them. I hope to do it as long as I'm able to get up in the morning.
Well, thank you very much, John, for your time today and your insights.
Thank you. Good to be here.